Hi, and welcome to the Grizzled Geologist podcast. I've got my friend Dr. Sarah Compton with me today, and we're going to visit about being an entrepreneur, working from home, and being a mom. So, Dr. Compton, why don't you take a minute to just introduce yourself and let us know what you're up to?
Yeah, so you kind of hit the highlights we're going over for today, but I'm a geologist and kind of rarely in our field. I actually started my college education that way. I went right in day one. I want to be a geologist, and fortunately had an
Interesting.
advisor, took me out into the field almost right away. So like I wanted to be a geologist before I knew field work was involved in camping and the beer. Like we stopped at the liquor store as soon as we got off the
Yep,
airplane, and then REI, which I'd never been to an REI. And then out into the field we went. So hit it.
that's awesome. I have kind of a similar story, except, I am one of the ones that did switch degrees, but it was when I touched a billion-year-old rock for the first time in like an intro class in the field. And I was like, okay, this is all the science is, plus you get to go outside, sign me up.
Yep.
So,
That's how most people do it. When I was teaching at Alabama at my undergrad and master's was at a school called IUPUI, and that's like a non-traditional kind of school. Most of the students there are folks who are going back to school. And so when I was doing my master's in teaching, my students were like 40, like how old I am now, and 50, and I'm some 22-year-old kid, right, teaching their lab class, which for IUPUI was a lab and a lecture. Like there was no big lecture hall and all that. But then, yeah, at Alabama, I used to joke like we're gonna convert one kid every semester. Like we're
yeah,
gonna
did
get
you?
somebody. Not that I know of, maybe. It's possible, but I don't know that we did, because half the students, not to knock this, plenty of people do this, and it's way better than the bar, but we joke that, like, some of the girls were there, you could tell, to get their MRS degree, which is not a bad route. Like I said, like, meet your guy in high school or in college, that's great. But they weren't necessarily in there to get their lifetime degree, you know? Did you were thinking about it, huh? You were like, MRS, what in the
Yeah, I
heck?
was like, what is this? And then it clicked. I'm like, oh, yeah,
Yeah, yeah, they were in
okay.
there with their MRS degree. So,
So where did the teaching come in? Was that kind of in between undergrad, graduate school, or when was that?
so for grad school, of course, like sometimes you're on an RA, which is a research assistantship, and that's when
Yep.
you're kind of doing ideally, it's your research, but sometimes your professor,
You're on a
principal,
grant, that kind of stuff,
yeah,
right?
and so you might do some of their work plus your research. I was on that for a little while, but also a TA ship, a teacher's assistantship. And
Oh, you got to
so
double dip.
yeah, it was a lot of fun. I was going to grad school, all of it, to be a professor, and so for me that was awesome. I know some people disliked it, obviously, like if you're there to do your research and you got to
Hmm.
teach a bunch of like 18-year-olds, it's irritating. And it also helped. My first bit was with non-traditional students. Like these people were very serious. They were
Yeah.
adults, right?
Hmm.
And it also changed a little my philosophy for teaching the young kids, because man, we had and it was rightfully so. They would kind of dress up, like some of the other students would dress up when they were teaching as like to create kind of a hierarchy.
Sure.
And I would wear like shorts and a t-shirt. I tried to make sure they weren't my I like beer t-shirt, but that did slip. It did slip
Well,
one
I
time.
definitely,
I
I
forgot.
definitely like.
I forgot I was supposed to sub in for a friend of mine, and guess what shirt I was wearing that day? So I show up.
I was just gonna say I like our casual Friday kind of vibe that both of us carry. That's definitely geologist. We're
I
just kind of
rolled.
missing a pin in our shirt pocket.
I
So,
rolled into this kid's class to teach it, and I'm like 5 or 10 minutes late because I'd forgotten. The other TA was like, "Where are you? Like, aren't you subbing in?" So I roll in there, hot and heavy, and I'm wearing my gym shorts and I like beer shirt, and I just immediately hear like, "Why can't she be our TA?" Like,
right?
I was like,
They
"No, no,
would
no."
the immediate signals.
Yeah, like your guy is way better. Like, so anyway, yeah,
That's awesome.
yep.
So what did you do after grad school? What was your first job?
So first job was actually with Noble Energy. So I got out at about 2013, and I'd initially gone into grad school and went all the way through for PhD because I wanted to be a professor. I wanted to teach.
Hmm.
And then the
Hmm.
deeper I got into academia, the more I realized that might not be for me. And learning about the postdoc route, which was not something that I had known really before. But in order
Yeah.
to have any hope, most of the time, in order to have any hope of being a professor, you go through what I call the postdoc crucible, which is
Okay.
any number of years of 6 month ish assignments for slave labor, no benefits, no guarantee of
Right.
future work, and you need to stand up on your own as much, like You bring your own grants, you do a lot. They might, they
No,
maybe
it's
give you a lab.
tenure track is a big job. I mean, and it's a lot of work. At first, it's not a lot of pay.
Yeah.
Listen, I was actually, I kind of, PhD. Honestly, I was on PhD track myself, and I'm, doing ridiculous stuff like diamond anvil type experience. I did mantle work, so I was into high temperature and pressure stuff. But I reached a point when I was like, and I'm glad you finished yours, but there was a huge cost benefit analysis that worked for me.
Yeah.
And I was way too broke to keep going.
Yeah. And
I was already stacking student loans, and what really happened was I watched 6 or 7 people from my department go and get these like 6-figure jobs right out of the gate. So I was just like, forget it, sign me up. Oil and gas from here on out. Like, let's do it.
Yep, and
Similar story. You were an igneous and metamorphic petrologist too, if I'm not mistaken, right?
Yeah, I did stick to igneous. It was mostly igneous, so almost completely useless to anything related to oil and gas.
One thing it could be though, with the critical minerals and all that stuff, there's still some upside to that degree still, but trust me, I get it.
Well,
and it's nowhere near as lucrative than, go ahead.
Yeah, I said that. At Noble, actually, when I started, they were looking at out in Nevada drilling. Because I remember I had switched groups and I had some folks in those groups. Once you get into oil and gas, you're looking at soft rocks. You're at sedimentary rocks all day, all night. You're eating, sleeping, breathing it. And so they had folks on there that hadn't thought about igneous rocks or seen one or anything for 20, 30 years. Right. And they sent me a picture of from under the microscope of like, is this intrusive or extrusive? And I was like, oh no, please put me on your group.
Perfect, right?
I'm gonna help you.
I was surprised how some of my igneous stuff worked in. Where it works good, and I guess we could maybe get into it a little later, but anything that has to do with like the chemical data that we log from the wells, getting into, the petrophysics, you're pulling core, these kinds of things, like, turns out I ended up on every core job at every company I worked for because of my chemistry background. So, it kind of makes sense.
It's similar and really, really helpful. And so, yeah, jumping into there, I saw similar-ish things from grad students and even from my undergrad. So I followed a couple of I went to undergrad master's at a school called IUPUI, Indiana University, Purdue University, blah, blah, blah. But a couple of us had gone from there to Alabama into oil and gas. And that wasn't going to be me. I was going to do a professorship, like I said, and then I learned about all of the postdoc shenanigans. My advisor left for the South Dakota School of Mines midway through my dissertation, which was the best, truthfully, not because he was bad, he was great, but that was the best thing that could have happened to me because one, it demanded a level of independence that I hadn't had. I was coding for the first time, for real coding for the first time in my life, and he could write the code just on a piece of paper. Like,
in his sleep.
Yes, and so when
growth opportunities, it's a big deal. Yeah.
Yeah, well, and so when I hit a roadblock, it was easy to walk down the hallway and just get the answer. So then when he left, that's when my Google skills got honed and I became a real developer and you do all that stuff. And it's still
how nice would it have been to have AI back then?
No, we
all these cheater kids now, like, we had the internet. The previous generation didn't have the internet. We had the internet. Now we have AI tools to do your entire project for you in 5 minutes.
No chat GPT, but there were still fortunately like snippets of code that you could grab, and I could do all of that. And I say real developer, it was still kludged together. If a developer saw my code, they would cry in their sleep. And while they
it was like my worst subject, Well, and I was doing like 21 hours kind of a deal. It was undergrad, but so my C+ class definitely took a hit. But with the tools now, and I also have like good friends I can call on if I really need it. But with AI and whatever, Python, you can do just about anything you need with a basic knowledge and knowing what you need, right?
Yes, that's the key, is knowing what to ask, how to ask it, and that's the skill transfer, right? It was almost not easier, but for Google, you get really good at how to search, and ChatGPT and the AI revolution is going to be that too, is prompting.
Yeah, no, there's definitely tricks to ChatGPT and AI. Like, it's not perfect, and I've been in there so much, I can see how it bends the information, and there's not a lot of timestamps and stuff. There's a little way to go, but it's certainly helpful. Good grief. So, okay, well, after Noble, what did you do?
Yeah, so then there was the downturn, right? Everybody in 2014, 2015, I think most people probably got kicked around a little bit in that time. I made a
I was
foray
lucky,
into
but yeah.
data. Yeah, like I was a year and a half in was my first layoff. And that was the first round Noble was doing. The team
Yeah.
that I was on just got decimated. Like
hmm
almost everybody on that team got laid off. And so huge lessons there that would be a whole different podcast, and
Sure.
then went into the data realm mostly because those were the only jobs that were available. Some of it was
Sure.
like, oh yeah, this can also be helpful in my career. But the other thing was, I have a PhD in geology and a year and a half in oil and gas. Like nobody's gonna hire that. So took the data job, bounced around with that, geosteering vendors, landed at Great
Okay.
Western from my Noble network.
Great.
And that was
At
when
network, the people that we meet and hang out with, like some of the most important aspects of our career, better
the
play nice.
most, the
Yep.
most. And so much of my even job hopping back then, like between Great Western and then, was still mostly my Noble network. I think one gig was from a connection through CrossFit, through my
Hey,
CrossFit
you,
gym.
you
Yep.
never know.
Yep.
I'm in a position in my life. This is the first time I didn't just kind of slide in, like
I'm so
Sandridge,
sorry.
my first job after college, that was hooked up for my friends. I did get laid off, but it was my friends that I met there that gave me information. And you'd be surprised, like these connections, like
Yeah.
7 degrees of Kevin Bacon kind of thing. But hey, buddy, call my friend. Oh, I call his friend, and oh, I may have some work for you. You seem talented. And oh, hey, call this friend. And so I did that for about 3 years, honestly, and made a living. I had some
Man.
software I was selling, and like I taught myself like the really deep ins and outs of ArcGIS, and
Yeah.
ended up buying my own perpetual geographics license, which
Yeah.
I still actually have it technically still works.
That's
So
awesome though.
yeah, well, I mean, yeah, let's talk pretty old version here and not plugged into the internet, definitely. But
That's just
it's an
like
old laptop at this
the like
point.
field vehicle
Yeah.
that still has manual door locks and a window.
Yeah, totally, totally. But then from there, it was an old friend from my first job that's like, hey, we're hiring people over here. Come and join the team. And
Yep.
then a person from that place is like, hey, left. And like 2 months later is like, come on, buddy.
Yeah.
And
And
then
you
you
see
come and
that.
follow them. And same thing to my last job with Revolution. So this has been the first time where it was like, I've been doing this 17 years at this point where I was just loose.
Yeah. Well, that's my LinkedIn hashtag, like geologist on the loose. Like, there's so many of us, and the
That'd be a good
Denver
t-shirt
network.
to make, I think.
You should stickers, all of that. Like
Making a note. Yep.
the Denver market for geos is just brutal. It's just
Yeah, well, it's one of the desirable places to live. I mean, that's all, I'm in Denver and,
well, and companies are
but I
fleeing like
would.
crazy.
Listen, it's really the only one that I'm like, would make more exceptions to be able to spend more time there. So,
Yeah. Well, and the market is shrinking, right? So
yep,
Chevron's going to be getting out of town.
yep,
PDC got
yeah.
bought by Chevron. They closed up shop. So, like, the M&A is very real. And you might get a small mom and pop. You got a couple of them popping up right now. And it's easy
And
to
those are
blend the
getting fewer
regulatory.
and fewer.
They are.
Like the capital for that, really what we've got are big operators really taking over everything. And
Yeah.
not every state works like Oklahoma, where you can go in and get a few acres, get a piece of the action, force pool if you need to, get
Yeah.
things done. So that's a really interesting, it's interesting to hear what's happening with the market up there, but it's certainly the desirable place to live.
For
And
sure.
then, so where did you end up next? And let's kind of start mixing in. When did you start having children in this process? And,
Yeah.
how has that
So
worked out when you were working for a full, like the more operator or service company data? And how is it now as an entrepreneur?
yeah, so we actually were thinking about starting a family and buying a house just before the announcements for Noble layoffs happened.
Of course.
So that you put stuff on the back burner for that. And then I went to work for a small company called Palomar, and the CEO there had said something at their little Christmas party. I say working, I was a contractor.
Mm-hmm.
But the CEO there said something that at the time really sounded more kind of like bullshit. But as we got older and started to realize things are disconnected, that you can't let this industry and necessarily job announcements or layoff announcements dictate too much of your life, because
Right.
especially with kids, you're never going to
Yep.
feel ready. And if you say you
No,
feel
and you're
ready,
not ready.
or if you are ready, that's just another way of saying you're very ignorant about what you're going into.
Hmm.
You are not ready to have kids. Nobody ever is. And so
Right.
we made the dive in, and that was, I interviewed at Liberty, and I did not tell them. I interviewed at Liberty while I was pregnant, newly pregnant.
And that's an interesting point. So here's
Yeah.
another example. You didn't feel like you could tell the company that you're going to work for that you were pregnant. Why is that?
Multifold. One, it's sort of irrelevant ish because they're hiring me
Agreed.
for a set of skills, right? But now that I have my own business, and even then, it is relevant to a business to know that in a certain amount of time, you might be gone for a little while. But at the time, I definitely felt like it would have been a ding against me. So legally here, of course, and they're not allowed to ask legally. And
Right.
so I just never divulged it. It never came up though. And some of that was a little bit of intentional conversation steering, but a lot of that too is, like I said, at least in Colorado, I don't know if it's federal, I assume it is, but in Colorado, they're not allowed to ask really anything about your family life.
Medical, that's no, and
Married, they're not even
honestly,
allowed
I
to ask if
agree.
you're married. They don't,
Yeah,
which they can figure it out. Like if you wear a wedding ring or if you have one on, usually that's going to mean you're married. An absence
sure.
of it doesn't necessarily mean you're not.
No, it doesn't actually. My ex-wife and I never wore ours. Like, I'm not a ring person.
Yeah.
But
Well, and
well,
depending on your work.
that's interesting, Sarah. That's another one of those ones. I just, now that I'm kind of like talking to women that have been through it, I'm starting to be more cognizant of it. But good grief, that's a whole thing.
Well,
And again, they should not be able to make a decision based on that. But I can understand why you were afraid. You
yeah,
know,
and with Liberty, I don't think it was justified. Having gotten in further, they actually had a great maternity
awesome
policy.
program. Yeah,
Awesome.
supportive.
I think I still used some of my vacation on maternity leave, but that was my first kid. I think I only did 6 or 8 weeks, and I was probably one of those few females that I was ready. We had just moved into a new house. I was 8 months pregnant when we moved here. We were already
Okay.
away from both of our families. We had no familial support. And so,
Yeah.
firstborn in a weird house with no even like neighbors, nothing. And
Right.
then 6 weeks shoved at home alone with a baby. You're not sleeping. It's not a vacation. Like
No,
it's
no, that's not a vacation.
it was miserable. And
It
so I
ceases to
think,
be a vacation from that point forward, like life.
gosh, and like our family came out. We had some family out and everything, but definitely it was either 6 or 8. I think Mia was so little. So actually, with her, it might have been because Liberty had a good policy. I think it was pretty long that I was gone with her, but I was
Okay.
ready when it was done.
Nice. Yeah.
Still cry when you like the first time. So Kevin did drop off for the first couple weeks, and we
Okay.
were 3 or 4 weeks in, and so we'd been doing it for a while. I've been leaving her for a while, but I had to do drop off, and that's a big come to Jesus moment. Like I
I
spent
bet.
half of that drive into the office bawling. What am
I
I
bet.
doing? This is terrible. Because when you hand her off to your husband, like she's
Yeah,
going to
he could
daycare,
deal
like you're
with the
handing
like,
her off to her husband, like here you go.
yeah,
And so that was
yeah,
a big, you have those moments when you get laid off, and you have
yeah,
them again when you have a kid, and it really shifts your priorities, or at least brings them into focus.
yeah.
But because I had also had that time at home alone with her, I knew I can't not work. It is not.
And you,
People can, and I love it. I love that there are stay-at-home moms. We need it. I love there are stay-at-home dads. It's great.
it's not an easy job either. I mean, I
No,
don't want it either, like at
no. And it's
all. Now, my
challenging.
ex-wife did, and I
Yeah,
can tell you after 11 years, she had a rocket booster on her back to get back to work.
I,
Like, and
I
it's good
bet.
for her mental health and like social stuff. I mean, having these kids and just dealing with them all day. Listen, it's not
Dealing with
lost on
other
me, and
parents.
I was not cut out for that job.
No,
So,
and God bless the folks who are and who do it, and
yeah.
especially
And she
God
was
bless.
she is such a wonderful mother to my kids, but oh my gosh,
It's brutal.
yep,
It's great.
yep.
It's great, but it is really hard. And for me, it's challenging, but just almost as like not in like the right ways. It's
Yeah,
just you know, it's challenging the same way that like whatever
Well,
other
so
mundane work. Anyway,
no, I'm with you now. Did your husband, does he go into the office or is he also at home?
so he does both. Right now, he's going in more frequently, but he had a different type of job. He was more of like a co-owner of an engineering firm. He went
Okay.
in nearly all the time, and that was partly his view on things of like if you want to advance, you should go into the office. Which
I'm gonna go into the, hey, listen, I'm gonna go into the office guy. Like
and I
me being at home is a disaster. I'm doing the best I can.
yes, well, and
You know, like
for
I need an office and a
collaboration,
space
yes.
separate from these other distractions, you know.
Yes, and I think psychologically, you know, our we have two small children and we both work. Like our house is a
Yeah,
disaster, and so I do miss
happens.
Great Western went fully work from home during COVID, like most people.
Uh-huh.
I had done some work from home with Terra Guidance, and so I knew for at least this point in my life that is most beneficial. But I also know I do better with a hybrid situation. So grad
Sure.
school, like half of my dissertation was written at home. So much of
Uh-huh.
the work is was done at home. So different people, like you said, like you can't work from home. Plenty of people cannot.
I can force myself, but it is torture. Like it's
Yeah.
the worst possible scenario.
And I flirt between it because there's some work that I need like deep focus, right?
Hmm.
And I do a lot better with that at home because there's just no chance of distraction. Or if I just need
From other people.
from
But
other
see, it's not
humans.
people's
Yes.
not my problem.
Oh,
Yeah, see,
yes.
other
From
people's
other
not my problem. I see something and, oh, you know, I got to go over and fix
yeah,
it. Or,
there are other distractions in terms of like being at home, but I'm lucky that if I and the kids, of course, like right now it's summer, and so the schedule is a shit show in my
yeah.
French. But like
No, that's fine.
during
Kidding me.
school, you know, we wake up and get them ready. Usually, I would wake up 4:30 ish to be into my home gym or our neighbor's gym when our home gym was a mess at 5. Do my
Uh-huh.
workout 5 to 6. Maybe it spills over and it's like 6:20, right? Because I'm old, so I have to
Yeah.
do warm up and I have to
Getting
do
the
cool down.
workout in is super important, though, isn't it?
I can't do it right now. Like I'm letting things kind of heal up, and
I've been
it's
slipping
driving me
too because of
bonkers.
life, but it
Ugh.
makes a huge difference. It makes a huge difference. So,
Yes, yes, and it does all kinds of things, especially because it's early morning. It does like I'm not gonna have anything to drink the night before I'm gonna work
yeah,
out. I
yeah.
cannot have one drink and then wake up at 4:30 a.m.
No. And
No,
actually, I married someone who wasn't a drinker, so that kind of faded out of my life. For me, it's
yeah,
really more of a kind of focus, like just do it, you know, get the cup of coffee I got to get out of the chair and like onto the ground to do the yoga.
yep,
Yeah.
yep.
So,
And so then
well,
like 5 to 6, 6:30, 6:20 is wake up the kids, and then
oof,
6:20 until like 8 is kid stuff. Is getting
yeah,
them during the school year is
the
like get them ready for
scramble.
school. Yeah, get them. Our bus comes too early, so I drive them to school. Fortunately, they ride the bus home. And in the summer, that timing is just all shot to crap because I want them. And working from home, I
Yeah,
don't.
yeah,
I
we're
would
dealing
feel
with it right
so much
now.
guilty.
Yep. The summer's tough, and then you've got these gaps between camps, and oh, it's like praying for school to start again.
Yes. Well, and then you feel guilty. Like I had a stay-at-home mom, and so I had a regular
Okay.
summer. Like we stayed at
Yeah.
home for the summer, and I kind of early on when my kids were a lot younger, and I did have a go into the office job. There's difference between the school year and summer is like non-existent. They're still
Yeah.
in terms of sleep and in terms of responsibility to them in the morning of get up, like you said, like go, 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 you know, we've got to do this now,
Chaos,
got to get
feed,
into
cry,
work.
dress. Yes.
Yes,
All of it.
yes. And so this is so much nicer because even though I'm not working out right now, but I'm still getting up about 5:30 or 6. And we can touch
Yeah.
on this in a minute, but some of that is to get working on my business, on my company, and then
Yeah.
I can do my day job. And then whenever they get up, and they're old enough now too to do most of the work for themselves.
Yeah, see, that's what I
So
was nice on that Molly clip where I've got the 3-year-old. That's the stressful part is like the two other ones, it's like they do their stuff, you know? But you've
yeah,
got to
and we train
wrestle
them
this
too.
one and oh my gosh.
We've got it. The 7-year-old will help the 5-year-old. So
Okay.
some mornings, if the workload isn't too high, I'll go upstairs and do like eggs and bacon and stuff. But most
Hmm.
mornings, it's like a packet of oatmeal. They climb up on the counter and heat it up, and that way, I'm still kind of able to keep an eye on them, but I can still work.
Yeah. And it
And
sounds like you're a super early functioning person. I'm kind of the same way.
forced
But
to
hey,
be,
go
yes.
ahead. Yeah.
You know,
Well, what I was going to say, excuse me, sorry. Why don't we touch on a little bit about what you're doing with your company and your software
yeah.
real quick? We're kind of getting on to the end here, and I actually have
Yep.
to go get my kids here in a few minutes. But
Oh yeah,
why
yeah.
don't you tell everybody about kind of what you're working on? You've got kind of a day job. We don't really need to get into that. I think
Yeah.
what people are going to be interested in is you've got a gun barrel plot
Yep.
software that you've been working on for a while. So why don't we touch on that, and we'll just spend a few minutes and we'll kind of get going here.
Cool. Yeah, so the software is targeted for development geologists and reservoir engineers, anybody involved in the gun barrel building workflow. And this is the nitty gritty part of it. This is we're in PowerPoint, moving our little circles, and then we're in the map module of Petra or Geographics or whatever, moving our little stick. So it's
Mm-hmm.
really targeted at that workflow, speeding it up exponentially, and allowing people to run through, you can run through 5 or 6 different scenarios in 5 or 6 minutes, get data on the real time impact that is having to your contact with the reservoir.
Mm-hmm.
And you're off to the races. And so instead of, some of those changes might take you a whole day. Like if you want to run through 5 scenarios, you might do that in your modeling software, and then
Uh-huh.
you're going to pick one because you don't want to do 5 gun barrel plots in PowerPoint. Or maybe
Right.
Spotfire, right? Maybe you're in Spotfire and you update it on the back end and then you hit enter and oh crap, we need to move this over a little bit. So then you go back it. So this,
Click and let it process.
yeah, and so this takes care of that. And I was inspired to do it when I was at Great Western, and we were
Okay.
doing this workflow, and I just saw highly technical people making highly technical decisions using qualitative
Like
visual
guessing.
that took
Sure.
forever to make. They took forever. So that's what inspired it. It's a problem I wanted to solve for myself, and so now we're out there. I have a beta project. I call it my wheelbarrow. Right, I'm trying to build like a pickup truck or a semi for
Okay.
everybody. And right
Okay.
now I have kind of the self-funded, bootstrapped wheelbarrow, and looking for folks who need a wheelbarrow and already want to jump in and be in there for the truck.
That's awesome. I'll make sure we get your link and information out there so people can get in touch with you if they want.
Awesome.
But that's awesome. I did a similar thing with, and I'm not going to turn it into a software. There's people that are doing a really good job with that already. But,
Yep.
I had a need for these more complicated well plans, and you just get into Excel and do little bit of trigonometry and off to the races.
Yep.
So, well, that's great. Do you have any words of wisdom to leave us with today?
No words of wisdom. It's Thursday. We're in the thick of it. But
Yep.
for anybody, I guess, if you're thinking of going the entrepreneurial route, don't let the hustle porn and this notion that like you have to kill yourself to get things going. Don't let that scare you off. Start small. Read the Lean Startup, and especially the story of the guy who started Zappos. That was my inspiration. When we think we got to start a shoe store, our first thing
Yeah.
is like, buy all the shoes and get the website and this. The guy started Zappos by going to a brick and mortar store, taking pictures. He talked to the store owners, like what he was doing, taking pictures, putting them up on his website, and then when somebody ordered it, he walked to the store, bought it, and shipped it. And his
Yep.
main thing that he was testing was people will buy shoes on the internet. And if I had tested it, if I was going to do that before I read that, it would have been, we've got to buy shoes and have a warehouse, and where am I going to store it, and
Yeah.
how are we going to do shipping and this and this. And he just laser focused on that one hypothesis and tested it as cheaply as he could. And
Yep.
once he had that traction, then you can start looking, how can I get money? Do I need money? What do I need to do? So start really small, start really cheap, and don't sacrifice your family life, mental health, personal health. Like you can do
Nothing, don't let anything get in the way of your personal peace. And I can just say that I 100% agree with you. I have done that where I've gone out, I'm doing a business, I'm going to go out and deploy all this capital first. You know
Yep.
what I did here? Now, and I've already made a couple of mistakes. Like, don't use Zoom; it's a piece of shit. I think might as well throw that money out the window. But what I did was kind of keep that in mind. Like, I started out with like $150, and enough people watched to where I could get a little bit better camera and use a little bit better image, recording equipment. So,
Yep.
well, that's great. Sarah, I have a feeling you're going to be coming back on. We've kind of become buddies through all this, and yeah. No, anytime you think of anything you want to, talk about, let's just get on the horn and get after it. But to everybody else out there, thank you so much for tuning in. And remember to subscribe to my channel on YouTube, hit the like button. The notification bell will let people know, or let YouTube know that you want to watch my content some more, so they'll feed it to you. But otherwise, to all you PhDs out there, keep staying smart. We appreciate it. We'll see ya.